The mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true. Let him answer. None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President.
So there's more from last night, and it's certainly getting people calling in and talking about it. Happy to have with us Dr. Thomas Schwartz, Vanderbilt Political Science Professor, joining us via Zoom. And let's just go back to the phones. Let's go to Cadelia, and I hope I'm saying that right. Cadelia, is that right? Cadella. All right, go right ahead.
Yes. Hi, how y'all doing? I watched the debate. I always watch all the debates. Very disappointing with Donald Trump. I think he was okay.
Oh, you have to turn down your TV. Everyone, turn down your TV. Go ahead.
Was rude. He was rude. He didn't do what the policy required. Everybody's supposed to take 2 minutes. Hooping and hollering as a president, that's a bad example for the world, for the state. Another thing is, he claims he's the president of the United States, but he only speaks of Republicans. Democrats are a part of the United States. If he can't be a president to America as a Republican and a Democrat, he needs to step down. And being in the position that he's in, he should have more consideration and understanding and politeness. He don't have that. My other statement is, he claimed he did more for the blacks. He has not done anything for the blacks but created chaos. Our black people just want to be recognized just like the white people, to be as one. He sees us as a joke. We're not his joke. I think he do need to step down. I was wishing that he had when they did the impeachment, but he got by with that. And I would feel better when he's out the seat, because he had created this world in number chaos.
Are you going to vote? So are you going to vote?
I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I heard Joe Biden. He spoke to the people last night, and that's the way you debate.
Okay.
Another thing is...
All right, one more thing. Go ahead.
Okay, one more thing. Trump needs to learn how to be courtesy. He don't have that. That's a bad example as a president. This is not... this is a democracy. This is not what they call it. The other people like
a dictatorship, right? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to cut you off because we have a lot of calls. Professor, we're hearing over and over from people saying he should obey the rules. He was rude. He talked over people. You know, I brought up that example from 2000 of Al Gore sighing audibly, and the problems that caused. But I mean, how does that play generally? I mean, some people might think he's being strong. You know, he's asserting himself and he's dominating the moment. So how does it? Is there a calculation about how that might play?
Well, there's a very astute political scientist by the name of Sean Trend who writes for writes for one of the Real Clear Politics websites. And one of his arguments is that was a deliberate Trump strategy because he wanted to avoid any extended discussion of a whole series of issues: his taxes, the virus, the economy. And that one way of doing that was to take on this sort of very strong dominance role, disrupting Biden's efforts. And to a certain extent, that may have succeeded. The problem is, I think it has a backlash effect of making voters and others see him as rude, impolite, non-presidential. So while it may have been a strategy to try to avoid having an extended discussion on topics that are not very favorable to Trump, on the other hand, it, as a style, may have it turned off a lot of people.
Professor, how many people, in your opinion, do we have any idea, are truly undecided? And I know we go through this often, but it seems like, especially now, it might be hard. Mm-hmm. How many undecided voters are there out there? How many people are going back and forth? Oh, I might do this, I might do that. I mean, how big is that universe of people?
It's not very large, and you've got to remember, this is a universe of people who are not terribly political. And this is part of the problem, is the people who watch the debates and who are interested are more political usually, and who critique that. There are groups of people in the country who don't care that much about politics, and it's not part of their lives, except they may feel the responsibility to vote, but that it's not something that they're passionate about. I think that number is relatively small now that actually will vote. I think this is going to be an election about turning out the base. This is my judgment right now, is that it's going to be about who can turn out their voters. And on that score, that may be what really turns the election, rather than persuading people who are not as motivated or interested in politics in general.
Let's go to Johnny. Hello, Johnny. Are you there?
I'm here.
All right, go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'll sit here, like to say, watch the debate. I'm an independent voter, lean neither way. And I'm not a Democrat, not a Republican. I look for what's best in the people. What I'm gathering, I don't know, may be wrong, but Trump, he speaks his mind. A lot of people don't like that. They can't handle it. As far as last night, you know, he didn't denounce white supremacy. He didn't say he did. I think he got kind of caught off guard from what I've seen. Might be wrong. But Biden, as far as the Antifa, I didn't hear him denounce that. If he did, somebody tell me. I don't know. I just, like I say, I'm independent, and I watch the media, and I see all the cities being burnt down, and it's Democratic-run city. You know, obviously the Democrats are holding the office in those cities. I'm like, why ain't they doing something about that?
Right.
If I lived in those cities, I would be moving. I would be going to the country. That's my thoughts, my 2 cents. Thank y'all for having me.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Johnny. Thanks for calling in. How, I guess I'll ask you your thoughts on what he said. I'm interested in this. Democratic cities are the ones where the problems are. Have we seen a president do this before, make this distinction between, well, those cities are run by a different party, as opposed to saying, I'm in charge of everything. In other words, it's my America. He's able to divide it out and say, no, that's a Democratic problem. That's a Democratic city. Have you ever seen something like that before?
Well, the most striking parallel is, of course, back to the 60s when there were riots in cities. But the cities weren't uniformly Democratic then. And, of course, the Democrats were in power for part of that time, too. So there wasn't this desire to make that distinction. We probably haven't. This is something that's distinct because of the sort of sorting and the degree to which larger cities have become more and more uniformly Democratic strongholds. This does offer an opportunity for a Republican president to make that distinction. It's not, on a civics level, it's not a very good one, in the sense that the president should be in charge and should not make that distinction. But it clearly has had some impact, as the caller indicated. It clearly has some resonance with some, that they see cities where these things are going on and that they're run by the Democrats. So Trump, while it might be regrettable, it does seem to have had some impact.
Let's go to Roy. Hello, Roy?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I got a statement, and then I've got a question for the professor. My statement is that I think that was one of the best debates that I've ever seen in my life. It was a true debate between Trump and the vice president. Trump is, his show, he ran it the same way. And if America believes in what's right, he has a right to say what he wants to say when he wants to say it, and Biden could compete with him. If you watch their facial expressions, you get more out of it than anything. Also, I want to ask the professor if the press is allowed in the voting offices of America to watch the count of the vote. That is going to be the most important thing that happens. We allow Jimmy Carter and his bunch to go overseas and watch the vote as it's counted and verifies the vote. The press this day and time here in America should be preparing to go in and watch the machines work watch the vote and report to the people of what goes on. If we don't, we're going to have chaos in this country and no telling what's going to happen.
So you're concerned about how the votes are counted. You want there to be transparency there.
I am. I am certainly concerned about how the votes are being counted, and Trump is too. He indicated in his speech, and he's preparing for that. And the press should be preparing themselves. My understanding is that the press is not allowed in the voter's office when they go to count the votes here in this country. And if that is true, then the press had better be getting prepared to do that. We had that same problem in Florida, and we're going to have it this year.
Oh, boy.
It's coming.
I hope not. Okay, what about that? He's worried about transparency, asking if the media can be there when it's counted. I don't know if Trump even wants that, but I mean, people want transparency. What about that?
Well, most election areas have both parties are in some sense represented in the count. It's not been a huge issue in recent elections. It did. The idea of Florida, of course, brings up bad memories of 2000 and all that went on down there at that time, and then the attempt to have a recount and all of that. I honestly don't. I think there certainly will be a great deal of attention to the process at this time, but I don't think there's any evidence that the people who count the votes, at least those who are in charge of it, really have been ever accused of really doing anything outside of some of the big city machines in earlier times. I don't think there's been any evidence of any widespread voter fraud or election fraud, but obviously that could come up this year.
Election commissions, there are election commissions all across the country. They are Aren't they generally, because of the governors and how these things are made up, aren't they generally Republican? Republicans will have a say at these places, right? I mean, how do these election commissions work?
Well, usually they are bipartisan. They usually have members from both parties, but the chair or the director might be appointed by the governor. If the governor is a Republican, it's likely to be a Republican. But they have strong civil service rules, all of that sort of thing, to keep it from being a political tool from either side. It's one of those. This is one of these issues which has usually not been in contest or in controversy in the past. I don't think that there's been any great outcry right now for on the question of counting, as much as simply the question of getting ballots and doing ballots and getting that issue straightened out. But I that will be, obviously, that will come up.
Let's go to James. Hello, James. Go right ahead.
Yes. You there?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Yes. My main concern is that Trump, he was more interrupted than Biden were when the moderator was interrupting them, even though Trump was talking above Biden, which I understand why he's doing it, because he's pissed off at the Democrats because of them paying the Black Lives Matter to destroy the cities, and they're doing nothing to get help to take the cities back. When Trump offered to get the military involved to take the cities back for them.
So you think the Democratic Party is paying Black Lives Matter to destroy the cities?
Yes, Black Lives Matter people even said.
Where do you get that?
Black Lives Matter people even said it on videos that they're funding them to do all that.
And you're sure that's see, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's an accurate video. I'm worried that would be inaccurate. It would be the very definition of fake news.
Okay. Speaking of fake news, I don't trust CNN and other news networks either that's against Donald Trump, because if they are in charge of counting the votes, there's no way at all of trusting them. And also, if you see the video from the debate last night, you can see that there is a wire coming out of Biden's jacket and out of his sleeve in front of his hand, to where you know that that's wrong in the debate.
Very interesting. Okay. All right. There's lots out there. There's a lot out there. And I'm glad you called in. James, thank you for calling in and sharing all of that. I guess I'm going to let you comment on however you want to take that, Professor. I mean, there's all this information out there, and it's very hard to validate in this day and time. We are inundated with information from Twitter and Facebook and all these places, and some of it is not accurate. I want people to know that. But, Professor, go ahead.
Well, it is not accurate, and it is a long tradition in American history of conspiracy theories. That we have had them from the founding of the nation, the tendency to see conspiracies. The only thing I would say is I think even the inaccurate information that you called out in this particular caller, it's icing on the cake. This is stuff that people already believe, or at least have. It just validates where they are already. I don't think you're really changing anyone's vote with this type of information. This is the type of thing that people embrace because they're already there. So I don't know that that's reassuring, but it does tell me that it's not as if suddenly people who had a very positive view of Black Lives Matter suddenly think, oh no, they're burning down cities. That's not the case. This is something else. And so I'm not I'm not as agitated by the idea that fake news or misinformation is necessarily going to turn this election. I don't think that's the case.
That's interesting. Okay, we have to take a break. All right, so we'll take a break. Be back right after this.